Starting with the legendary Atari Video Computer System, later known as the 2600 in 1977, Atari had been a mainstay in the console market, releasing a system for every generation. Following the 2600, we had the 5200 Super System in 1982, a competitor to the ColecoVision and Vectrix that was never released outside of North America. Then in 1984 we had the 7800 Pro System, a rival to the Nintendo Entertainment System and Sega Master System, that offered backwards compatibility with the 2600. That same generation also saw the XE game system arrive in 1987, a hybrid machine that was Atari's second attempt at consolising their 8-bit computer range after the failure of the 5200. Around this time we also heard murmurings of a new 16-bit console, which most people believed would be based upon Atari's best-selling ST computer. This rumour turned out to be false when finally, in 1990, Atari announced that they were working on a new 32-bit console called the Panther, which promised to wipe the floor with the Mega Drive and SNES. Just a year later, Atari also announced that they were designing another console too, called the Jaguar, which was based on 64-bit technology and would be released around 3 years after the Panther. This system was being developed in the UK by a company called Flare Technology, who were made up of ex-Sinclair research engineers and had previously developed the ill-fated Conix multisystem. Later that same year, Atari announced that they had decided to cancel the Panther completely, as the Jaguar was progressing much quicker than they originally envisaged, and will represent a far greater technological leap. At this point they were touting a late 1992 release date for the console. Unfortunately, this proved to be very optimistic indeed, and after being beset by problems throughout its development, the Jaguar finally arrived in late 1993. Almost the same moment the Jaguar hit retail shelves, Atari started talking about follow-ups for the system too. That would start with the Jaguar CD drive in late 1994, followed by the all-in-one Jaguar Duo in 1995, and a more advanced Jaguar 2 console in 1996. And that is what we are going to be focusing on here.
Introducing Alien vs. Predator for the 64-bit Atari Jaguar. You might not want to play it alone.
Ah! Mom.
At the time of release, the Jaguar featured some truly groundbreaking technology and represented the very first time multiprocessor architecture had been used in a games console, something that was much lauded about the PlayStation 3 upon release some 13 years later. However, as impressive as the technology in the console was, it didn't come without its faults, and they were soon finding ways of fixing them for the Jaguar 2 design. First of all, there was the CPU issue, which was possibly the system's greatest downfall. The Jaguar was designed without any kind of central processing unit. It was intended that programmers would use all the custom chips to perform their functions in unison, negating the need for one. But as the chipset was finalised and the system was shown to developers, the feedback Atari was getting is that developers found the design confusing and very unapproachable, so the decision was made to add in a Motorola 68000, the same chip that had been used as a CPU in their own Atari ST computer, as well as systems like the Commodore Amiga, Apple Macintosh and Sega Mega Drive. The 68000 would serve two uses in the Jaguar. Firstly, to perform minor functions such as reading the controllers and booting the BIOS to lighten the load on the custom chip slightly, and also add some familiarity for developers. Atari designated it as a slave chip, not a CPU, and advised programmers to simply turn it off after it performed its tasks, so as not to overload the bus. As the 68000 was a 16-bit processor and also the slowest chip on the motherboard, using it extensively would hog the 64-bit bus, stopping the custom chips from accessing it and slowing the whole system down with it. Unfortunately, many of the developers didn't heed Atari or Flare's words, using the 68000 to control the whole Jaguar and only designating simple graphics and sound functions to Tom and Jerry, the Jaguar's GPU and DSP respectively. The familiarity issue had backfired on Atari big time, with numerous developers choosing to simply port existing code over to the well-known 16-bit chip rather than rewriting it to take advantage of the Jaguar's advanced technology. This led to many of what people dubbed lazy 16-bit ports, with stuff like Zool 2, Pinball Fantasies, Cannon Fodder, Flashback and Brutal Sports Football looking barely different to the existing versions on the market. In the Jaguar 2 design, the 68000 will be replaced with another multi-roller chip in the form of the 68020. This was a true 32-bit CPU that would be in full control of the whole system while offering a good deal of compatibility with what came before it. Atari would also upgrade the custom RISC chips too, with Tom and Jerry being replaced by Oberon and Puck. These new names fitted in with the codename assigned to the Jaguar 2, Midsummer, after the William Shakespeare play. These two were designed with backwards compatibility in mind, being more powerful versions of what came before them.
To master Kazumi Ninja, and to defeat the evil ninja Gyaku, you need razor-sharp reflexes, superior strength, and a really good cheat sheet with all the death moves.
Kasumi Ninja only on the 64-bit Jaguar.
Yeah!
The second perceived issue with the Jaguar was a lack of RAM, with just 2 megabytes available that had to be shared between the whole system, with no dedicated memory for either graphics or sound. So to fix this, the Jaguar 2 would come with a hefty 8 megabytes of RAM instead, 4 times the amount in the original Jaguar. Other more minor fixes included a built-in CD drive from day one, rather than an add-on, while still featuring a regular cartridge slot. Dedicated 3D hardware that meant the Jaguar could display close to 1 million fully texture mapped polygons on screen. The original Jaguar had no hardware support for texture mapping, unlike the rival PlayStation and Saturn, so relied on the blitter chip and slow software routines to perform this. Rather than me going through all the various hardware upgrades and functions, just take a look at the technical specifications for the Jaguar 2, and you'll see for yourself what a hugely powerful machine this would have been, besting the then market-leading PS1 in almost every area. The Jaguar 2 design was almost completely finalised when it was cancelled due to the original Jaguar being discontinued, and Atari's reverse merger with JTS Storage. Flare Technology built a couple of different prototypes that have now found their way into the hands of collectors. These feature minor differences but are both missing the Puck chip, with a Jerry from the original system in its place. These have been tested with standard Jaguar games and are fully functional. It's unknown if any games were ever started for the Jaguar 2, but it's more than likely that several would have been in production with the system so far along its development cycle. Nobody has come forward to say they worked on the hardware, so it's likely any programming would have been done internally. However, if we want to speculate further, there are a number of titles that are more than likely for one key reason. You see, some of the Jaguar development team joined VM Labs after leaving Atari to work on the Nuon, a DVD player with powerful gaming capabilities that went up against the might of the Sony PS2, but ultimately failed. In that system's games lineup we can see Merlin Racing, an unofficial sequel to Atari Karts by the same dev team, Iron Soldier 3, a true sequel to the excellent Jaguar games by Eclipse, and Jeff Minter's Tempest 3000, yet another Jaguar sequel, in this case to its most revered game. So it's likely all three would have been heading to the Jaguar 2 originally.
Jaguar by Atari is the only video game system with 64 bits of awesome power. This irresponsible action into the living rooms of our young people. Get bit by Jaguar.
That just leads us to speculate on whether cancelling the Jaguar was the right thing to do. I'm of the personal opinion that it wasn't, but it's easy to understand why they did, especially with both Jack and his son Sam Tremmell in poor health. A lot of people point to the amount of money Atari hemorrhaged on the original Jaguar and their precarious financial position. But they forget that although Atari Corporation had been posting some pretty huge losses during this period, they still had a huge amount of money in the bank, thanks to the $90 million settlement from rival Sega over patent infringements. Rather than take a gamble on Jaguar 2, Atari chose to cut their losses and run, which ultimately proved to be a terrible decision when JTS Storage, the company Atari Corporation merged with in 1996, entered liquidation themselves just 2 years later with all that money frittered away. I believe that Atari should have stuck with Jaguar 2 as they had already built up a passionate user base, albeit a small one, and now had the cash to support the machine thanks to Sega. The backwards compatible nature of the Jaguar 2 gave it a big selling point over its then rivals. But what do you think? Do you think Atari should have given the Jaguar 2 a chance, or do you think Atari were right to cancel it? Please let me know in the comments. I thank you all for watching the story of the unreleased Jaguar 2, and I hope you enjoyed this look into the past. But before I go, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible, giving special thanks to the following patrons in particular: Thunder Fundington, Don DiLiberto, Carl Olsen, Mark Lawrence, Mr. Gaboto and Coldar Fusion. If you also want to help support my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access to a host of extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Laird, and I thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.